Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating split in the canine world. The entirely different ways we need to interact with the pet dogs we meet on the street versus the working service dogs we see out in public. Now, we all love our four-legged friends, right? But the way we communicate with a typical companion animal should be vastly different from how we act around a medical professional on four legs. Treating a working dog like a pet can actually be dangerous, and today, we're going to see exactly why. Here is a quick look at our agenda for today. We'll be covering reading dog body language, the concept of consent, calming petting techniques, defining a service dog etiquette, and finally, busting some common service dog myths. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, Reading Dog Body Language. So, before you even get close to a dog, you really need to look for those visual cues. A dog that's comfortable with being approached is usually pretty obvious, you know? They have a calm, relaxed body posture, absolutely no tension, and maybe they're giving you a gentle, loose tail wag. But you've also got to watch out for the more subtle signs of fear and anxiety, because we humans misread these all the time. If a dog is licking its lips when there's no food around, or panting when they aren't hot, or suddenly yawning when they definitely aren't tired, they are actively telling you they are stressed out. Other big red flags include furrowed brows, cowering, or just trying to move away from you. To really put this in perspective, imagine how absolutely terrifying it would be if a total stranger just rushed up to you, loomed over you, stared intensely into your eyes, and grabbed you for a hug without even asking. Sounds awful, right? Well, while primates love hugs, dogs generally do not. That is exactly how they feel when we greet them incorrectly by staring, leaning over them, or reaching directly into their personal bubble. Which brings us perfectly into Section 2, the concept of consent. You really have to ask yourself, does this dog actually want to be pet? Just because a dog is a pet, heck, even if it's your own pet, it doesn't mean it's always in the mood for affection. It's a pretty simple truth, but ignoring it can seriously damage the trust between you and the animal. And that introduces a highly important yet incredibly easy practice known as consent testing. Here is how consent testing works. You pet the dog for a few seconds, pause, and just watch their reaction. If they nuzzle your hand, paw at you for more, lean their weight into you, or roll over for a belly rub, that is clear, enthusiastic consent. They want you to keep going. But if you stop and they immediately turn away, do that lip-licking thing we talked about, or just get up and leave, well, you need to respect their boundaries and back off. They've opted out. Now, if you're trying to interact with a dog that's actively showing shy or fearful cues, you have to completely flip your approach. Never go in head-on. Avoid direct eye contact and approach slowly from the side. You want to literally make your body smaller by lowering your shoulder or bending down, assuming, of course, the dog isn't snapping or lunging. Keep your hands to yourself and simply let them come to you on their own terms to sniff. It's all about making yourself look as non-threatening as possible. Moving on to Section 3, Calming Petting Techniques. Once you've successfully navigated their body language and you have clear consent, how should you actually touch them? Well, it turns out there's a literal science to petting. There are 3 scientifically backed techniques that actually raise oxytocin, that's the trust and bonding hormone, in both you and the dog. This kind of touch activates their parasympathetic nervous system, basically telling their brain, hey, you're safe. You want to use long, slow strokes down the spine, starting right from the base of the skull. You can also try gentle ear rubs, just massaging the base of the ears in slow circles. And finally, a soft, still touch or gentle circles on the dog's chest builds immense trust. Believe it or not, just 5 to 24 minutes of this can drastically lower a pet's stress levels.
Okay, Section 4, Defining a Service Dog.
So here is where we make a massive pivot. Everything we just talked about, reading, engaging, and connecting with dogs, throw it completely out the window when you see a service dog out in the world. The Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, explicitly defines a service animal as a dog individually trained to do work or perform tasks for a person with a disability. This establishes a hard, undeniable legal line. These dogs are working professionals. They are not pets. And crucially, the task the dog is trained for has to be directly related to the person's disability. So, a dog whose only job is to provide emotional comfort, that does not legally qualify as a service animal under the ADA. Which leads us to Section 5, Service Dog Etiquette. Because they are actively working to assist their handler, the way we act around them has to completely change. The absolute cardinal rule of service dog etiquette is simple. Hands off. Do not pet, touch, or feed the dog. Don't talk to them, don't whistle, don't make kissy noises, and don't even make direct eye contact. Never separate the dog from its handler for any reason, and whatever you do, Please don't ask the handler to have the dog demonstrate its tasks like it's some sort of parlor trick. Distracting a working dog takes its focus away from its handler, which could cause it to miss a critical medical alert and, quite literally, put the handler's life in danger. To really drive this boundary home, think of it in a human context. If a handler tells you no when you ask to pet their dog, do not be offended. You wouldn't walk up to a total stranger and ask to pet their wheelchair, right? Or get mad if they wouldn't let you play with their mobility cane. A service dog is vital medical equipment first and foremost.
Finally, let's wrap up with Section 6, Busting Service Dog Myths.
Despite these clear etiquette guidelines, handlers face invasive questions and huge challenges every single day because of public misunderstandings. Let's clear up a few of the big ones. The first major myth is that these dogs are only for visible disabilities, like for folks who are blind or use a wheelchair. In reality, service dogs heavily assist with tons of invisible conditions. We're talking alerting a diabetic to dropping blood sugar, detecting an oncoming epileptic seizure before it happens, alerting a hearing-impaired person to a fire alarm, or grounding a handler during a PTSD panic attack. You simply cannot judge a person's need for a service dog just by looking at them. Another huge myth is that a service dog must legally wear a special vest, a harness, or have some official identification card. Now, while most handlers do use those tools as a public courtesy, just to let everyone know the dog is on the clock, it is absolutely not required by U.S. law. You cannot deny a dog access just because it isn't wearing a neon vest. And remember, even if a service dog appears to be resting or just chilling out, it is never okay to pet them without permission. They are always on duty.
People also tend to assume they can easily spot a fake service dog by its breed, its size, or if it isn't marching in a perfect, rigid heel position. But consider this. Extremely small dogs are actually fantastic for being carried to detect environmental allergens or for psychiatric support. Large breeds are great for providing mobility and balance support. Plus, some working tasks require the dog to actively monitor the environment or retrieve dropped items, which means they actually need to move freely on a longer leash rather than sticking to a precise heel. There is simply no one-size-fits-all look for a service dog. And one more crucial legal point. Under the ADA, businesses, state governments, and local governments must allow service dogs in all public areas. Yes, that includes restaurants and hospital waiting rooms. If it's not immediately obvious what the dog does, staff are only legally allowed to ask two very specific questions. Is the dog a service animal required because of a disability? And what work or task has the dog been trained to perform? That's it. They cannot ask for medical documentation or a demonstration. And most importantly, someone else's allergies or fear of dogs are never legally valid reasons to deny a handler access to a business.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I'll leave you with a final thought to chew on. We've explored two entirely different ways humans and canines interact today, from building trust with the nervous pet through consent testing and calming touch, to understanding the strict hands-off respect required for working medical animals. The next time you cross paths with a canine, will you look for their consent to be pet, or will you respectfully give them the space they need to do their vital job? Keep that in mind, and thanks so much for exploring this with me.